In the quiet town of Meadow Creek, where the school hallways always hummed with low chatter and the same predictable routine repeated itself day after day, there existed a girl named Lila Mercer, a girl who somehow managed to twist the flow of normal life around her presence. Lila was the kind of person who loved attention so fiercely that it became her personality, her identity, and her only way of belonging. Every month she appeared with a brand new cast, sometimes an arm cast painted bright pink, sometimes a leg cast decorated with stickers, sometimes even a neck brace that made absolutely no medical sense. People whispered about her behind lockers. Some annoyed, some amused, and some who genuinely fell for her dramatic stories. Her tears flowed as easily as water, as if she could cry at command, and she used them freely to pull sympathy out of anyone who made the mistake of asking, "Are you okay?" But everything changed on the chilly Monday morning when Meadow Creek High prepared for a rare school-wide assembly. Students shuffled into the gym, settling on the bleachers with the usual mix of boredom and curiosity. But then, unexpectedly, the doors creaked open and Lila's mother stepped inside. She looked pale, genuinely shaken, and she walked straight to the school director, whispering urgently into his ear. The air shifted instantly. The director's face dropped. He straightened, picked up the microphone, and asked in a tense voice, "Lila Mercer, please come down." The entire gym fell into eerie silence. Layla, who was seated near the front, stood up slowly, confusion knitting her brows. When she reached her mother leaned forward and whispered something into her ear, and that was the moment everything exploded. Lila's scream tore through the gym, sharp, high-pitched, and terrifying. She clutched her head and wailed, "Oh my God," before collapsing to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Tears poured down her face like she was living the worst moment of her life. She stumbled as she tried to run toward the exit, falling. Halfway there and crawling dramatically across the polished gym floor. Her mother rushed forward and practically dragged her out while Lila's cries echoed behind her. And just like that, a normal school morning turned into a haunting memory for everyone present. Nobody knew what had been whispered. Nobody understood why Layla reacted like the world had ended. Students crowded together in little huddles, whispering theories. Teachers exchanged worried looks. Lila's friends texted her endlessly, desperate for answers. But all she replied was, "Why couldn't it have been me?" That single message spread like wildfire, feeding the mystery until it grew into something darker. By the next morning, a rumor consumed the entire school. Layla's father and her little sister were in a devastating car crash, and neither survived. The rumor carried weight because of how real Lila's breakdown had looked. Students cried. Teachers prayed, and the school counselor even organized a support circle. A giant card filled with signatures and heartfelt messages passed through every classroom. People cried for her, prayed for her, and felt guilty for every time they had laughed at her stories or rolled their eyes at her exaggerated injuries. Days passed. Layla didn't return. Assemblies were held with a moment of silence. Everyone waited for news, any news. But then, 1 week later, Lila walked through the school gates. No tears, no cast, no swollen eyes. Just her normal, attention-hungry self. Confusion rippled through the hallways. Students whispered behind textbooks and locker doors. Why wasn't she devastated? Why wasn't she mourning? Why did she look normal? That afternoon during lunch, the truth finally crashed into the school like a brick through a window. A few teachers were talking near the cafeteria doors, and their voices drifted across the tables. Apparently, the reason Lila's mother came to school that day wasn't because of a fatal accident. It wasn't even close. She came to tell Lila that she needed to walk home, because Layla's little sister had been taken to the hospital after breaking her pinky finger. Not dying, not in danger, not even seriously injured. Just a tiny fracture in the smallest finger on her hand. The entire school felt like it had been slapped. All the tears, the prayers, the messages, the emotional chaos, everything had been for nothing. Layla had turned a broken pinky into a full-blown tragedy, and that was the day Meadow Creek High realized the most insane rumor ever created came from a girl who didn't just want attention, She wanted the world to revolve around her. In every school, there are stories that cling to the walls long after the students who live them have gone. And at Ridgewood Middle, no story became more legendary than the rumor that swirled around a girl named Marissa Blake, a girl whose talent for dramatics could rival any stage performer and whose need for attention seemed to stretch farther than the hallways could contain. Marissa had always been that student, the one who limped into class with a fresh cast every few weeks, each decorated with elaborate doodles and sympathetic signatures, always accompanied by some tragic story about falling off a horse, tripping down the stairs, or being hit by a rogue shopping cart in the grocery store parking lot. It didn't matter how unbelievable her tales were. She declared them with such conviction that a surprising number of people believed her, or at least pretended to. For most of us, Marissa was more exhausting than entertaining. She cried over the smallest inconveniences: dropped pencils, late homework, someone sitting in her favorite seat, or even when the lunch ladies ran out of spaghetti before she reached the front of the line. But the unusual thing about her wasn't the theatrics themselves. It was the fact that every time she pulled off one of her dramatized crises, she managed to gather a collection of students who hovered around her like bees swarming spilled soda. But one particular morning, one foggy, strangely quiet Wednesday, Marissa managed to pull off something so wildly dramatic, so unbelievably intense, that it would ripple through the entire school for weeks. The story began in the gymnasium, where nearly 600 students were packed shoulder to shoulder for the weekly school-wide assembly. The bleachers rattled as kids climbed over each other to reach their spots, the air buzzing with preteen chatter. Teachers paced around, trying to calm people down, while the principal tested the microphone with a sharp tap-tap-tack that cracked through the noise like lightning. Suddenly, the entire atmosphere shifted, the big double doors at the far end of the gym creaked open, and everyone turned their heads as Marissa's mom, normally calm, professionally dressed, and composed, walked in with a pale face and stiff shoulders. Her heels clicked loudly on the gym floor, echoing unnervingly. Something about the way she moved made the gym fall almost instantly silent. She walked straight to the director of the assembly, leaned in, and whispered something that nobody else could hear. The director's expression darkened immediately. He swallowed nervously, picked up the microphone, and called out, "Marissa Blake, come down here, please." A hush fell across the bleachers. Even the kids who normally didn't care about anything school-related leaned forward. Marissa stood up slowly, her face already arranged into a worried expression, as if preparing to milk whatever situation was coming. She walked down the bleachers, clutching the railing dramatically, looking around as if expecting someone to tell her what was happening. But when she reached her mom, her mother leaned down, whispered something into Marissa's ear, and then the gym exploded. Marissa let out a scream so loud, so sharp, so filled with fake-sounding agony that several teachers jumped. Her face contorted, her hands flew up to her head, and she staggered backward, shouting, "Oh my God! No dash, no dash, N-O-O-O." Before anyone could react, she spun around and broke into a messy run toward the door, sobbing loudly. Halfway there, she collapsed dramatically onto the polished floor, writhing, screeching, muttering things that nobody could fully make out but sounded very tragic. Her mom rushed over, grabbed her by the arm, and all but dragged her out of the gym while Marissa continued to wail like someone had stolen her entire future. The gym was silent, frozen. Everyone stared after her. Teachers exchanged looks. Students whispered. Even the principal seemed unsure what to do. By lunchtime, the rumors had already started spreading, thin at first, then thick and unstoppable like wildfire in dry grass. Some kids claimed Marissa fainted. Others said she was having a panic attack. But the most persistent version, the one that spread fastest, was far darker. Someone whispered that her dad and little sister had been in a terrible car accident. Few kids said they heard both of them had died. No one knew who started it, but within hours, everyone believed it. The school lit candles. Teachers asked for prayers. A giant card was passed around, filled with sympathy messages and shaky signatures. Some kids cried, kids who never even liked Marissa. The rumor consumed the school. It became the only thing anyone talked about, but Marissa didn't return the next day or the next. Or the one after that. Her friends texted her constantly, asking what happened, how she was, whether she needed anything. She only sent back one message. Why couldn't it have been me instead? That single text deepened the rumors even more. Teachers whispered in corners. The counselor set aside time for grieving. The principal made announcements reminding everyone to value their loved ones. By the 5th day, the school was drowning. In pity for Marissa, and then on a quiet Monday morning, the doors to the front office opened, and Marissa walked in as if nothing had happened. Her face was normal, her clothes were normal. She didn't look like someone who had just lost her family. Everyone stared. Her friends bombarded her with questions. And finally, Marissa, looking slightly annoyed, gave the real explanation. Her mom had come to school to tell her that her little sister, far from being dead, had merely been taken to the hospital because she had broken her pinky finger. That was it. That blood-curdling scream. That dramatic fall. That week of rumors, prayers, and emotional chaos. All because of a pinky, and somehow it was still one of the most unforgettable moments in the history of Ridgewood Middle School. The day after the assembly incident, the entire school felt like it was covered in an invisible fog of confusion, fear, and curiosity. Hallways that were usually chaotically loud suddenly felt muted, as if students were trying to whisper around a ghost they didn't want to disturb. Teachers walked with tense eyes, pretending they didn't hear the rumors but clearly listening enough to stay updated. Everyone kept replaying the same moment in their minds, the moment when the girl, Maya, screamed so violently that even the walls of the gym seemed to flinch. Students told the story differently depending on where they were sitting. Some said her scream sounded like she had seen something horrifying. Some claimed they saw her knees buckle before she hit the floor. Others swore her mom looked like she had been crying before she entered the gym. No matter what version people repeated, the ending was always the same. Maya collapsed, screamed, cried uncontrollably, and was dragged out of the gym like someone being pulled away from a tragedy too big for a child to carry. By lunchtime that day, the rumor machine had already swallowed the school whole. Someone claimed the mom was shaking when she entered the gym. Someone else insisted Maya fainted once she reached the hallway. Another student said he saw the principal holding his head in his hands afterward, whispering something like, "Not again." With every retelling, the rumor became darker, heavier, and more elaborate. By the time the final bell rang, the whispers had hardened into one horrifying conclusion. Her dad and little sister died in an accident. It sounded too horrible to question, too dramatic to resist, and too emotional for kids to process logically. Even the teachers spoke about it in hushed tones during breaks, not knowing if it was appropriate to ask for confirmation or not. The school counselor sent out an email saying she was available for anyone struggling with grief or confusion, which only convinced everyone that the worst was true. The next morning, someone taped a piece of paper to Maya's locker, a giant heart drawn in red marker with the words, "We're here for you." After that, more notes appeared. "Stay strong. We love you. You're not alone." A group of girls from her class placed flowers there, even though they weren't sure what kind of flowers were appropriate for the situation. Another student made a cardboard sign that said, "Praying for Maya and her family." The principal called for a school-wide moment of silence during homeroom, and even though half the students didn't know what exactly they were praying for, the entire building went still for 30 seconds, quiet enough to hear the air vents humming. But out of everything, the text messages circulating among Maya's friends were the most unsettling. When one of them asked if she was okay, she responded with, "I wish it was me." When another asked what happened, she texted, "Why couldn't it have been me instead?" Screenshots of those messages spread instantly, turning the rumor into a guaranteed truth. Teachers tried to stop the gossip, but nobody could because everyone believed they already knew exactly what happened. For 3 days, the school lived inside the shadow of a tragedy that hadn't even been confirmed. Students cried for someone they barely liked, Groups made sympathy cards covered in glitter and long messages, writing things like, "You're stronger than you know, and your family is watching over you from heaven." Even students who usually made fun of Maya sat together talking about how horrible it all was. Some felt guilty for all the times they rolled their eyes at her. Others whispered that maybe she acted like she wanted attention because she wasn't getting enough at home. Everyone, even the ones who never said her name before, suddenly cared about her life like it was their responsibility. But the strangest part came on the fourth morning. The school had planned an official prayer in the auditorium. Teachers were lining up classes, students were holding candles, and the principal was adjusting his tie nervously. Everyone waited quietly for the event to start. And then right in the middle of the hallway, the door opened. Maya walked in. Her hair was in a messy ponytail, her eyes slightly swollen, but she wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't devastated. She looked normal, tired, yes, annoyed maybe. But normal. The hallway froze. Students stared at her like they were looking at a ghost. A girl whispered, "Oh my God, she's here, does that mean?" Another added, "She must be in shock." The principal walked toward her slowly, as if expecting her to collapse again. Maya blinked at him, confused. "Why is everyone staring at me?" she asked. And that simple question, the one that sounded far too calm for someone whose family supposedly died, sent a cold, sharp crack through the perfect tragic story the school had built. Because suddenly, something about the rumor didn't fit anymore. Something felt wrong. Something didn't add up. And for the first time since the assembly, people wondered if they had believed a lie so dramatic that they forgot to think at all. The rest of that week at school felt strangely heavy, like everyone was carrying around a secret grief that didn't belong to them, yet somehow still sat on their shoulders as if it were their own. Teachers whispered in corners, students checked their phones during class, hoping for updates, and even the usually loud lunchroom seemed muted. Every conversation centered around the same girl, the same rumor, the same imagined tragedy that no one could confirm but everyone repeated. People who had barely spoken to her before suddenly acted like they had known her forever, telling stories like, "She once told me her dad drove her everywhere," or "her little sister was the sweetest kid," even though most of us had never actually met her family, and the truth was the girl didn't talk about them much at all. Still, the rumor grew a life of its own by Wednesday. It wasn't just that her dad and sister had died. Some kids said the crash happened on the highway during a storm. Others said it was a drunk driver. And a few spread the wild claim that she was supposed to be in the car with them but stayed home because she felt a bad omen, which somehow made the rumor feel even more dramatic and tragic, feeding something in the students that made them cling to the story even harder. The principal came into classrooms reminding everyone to respect her privacy, which only made people speculate more, like the silence itself was evidence that something huge had happened. A memorial table was even set up near the library with fake candles and a photo someone pulled from her old Facebook posts. And nobody questioned it because in middle school rumors don't need truth, just attention. Meanwhile, every time her name came up, people performed sympathy like it was a competition. Who could be the saddest? Who could sigh the loudest? Who could look the most heartbroken about a tragedy none of us even knew was real? Some students cried because they thought crying was the right thing to do. Others cried because they liked the feeling of being connected to something dramatic. A few kids kept asking teachers if they could organize a fundraiser or make a banner, which somehow added more weight to the week, turning an ordinary school into what felt like the set of a melodramatic TV show. But what confused everyone most was the girl's silence. She didn't post anything online, didn't answer calls, didn't respond except for a few vague texts saying, "Why couldn't it have been me?" which spread through school faster than the rumor itself and became repeated screenshots passed around as proof that the tragedy was real. By Thursday, people started writing messages of condolence on sticky notes and plastering them on her locker, so many that the metal door was barely visible under all the pastel paper, scribbled with shaky handwriting and dramatic messages like "Stay strong" and "Heaven gained 2 angels." The school counselor sent out an email about grief resources, even though no one had verified anything. But rumors don't wait for truth, they grow because people feed them, and this one had been fed more than most. Then Friday came, and that was when everything took a strange turn. Someone noticed her mom's Facebook page still had pictures posted the day before, smiling with both daughters at a restaurant, and suddenly doubts began to spread in quiet, guilty whispers. A few students insisted the pictures must have been old, others argued the mom probably wasn't ready to announce the death online, and some said the account was hacked. But the uneasiness was there now, settling under the surface like a crack in glass, and the whole school felt it, a lingering tension that made people watch the doors every few minutes as if the girl might walk in and confirm everything. And then she did, completely normal clothes, completely normal face, completely alive family behind her, and the shocked wave that rippled through the school was so intense it felt like electricity, buzzing through the hallways as everyone suddenly realized maybe none of it had been true at all. After the incident in the gym, the entire school was buzzing with whispers, half-truths and exaggerated versions of what had actually happened. The girl's sudden scream, her uncontrollable crying, and the way her mother had dragged her out of the assembly created an atmosphere of tension that lingered for days. Nobody knew exactly what had triggered her reaction, and that uncertainty gave rise to all kinds of rumors. Some claimed that her father had been in a serious accident. Others said her little sister had been critically injured, and a few even whispered that both had died. Each day, new versions of the story spread like wildfire through classrooms, hallways, and social media, with students embellishing details to make the tale more dramatic and frightening. Meanwhile, the girl herself remained absent from school, which only intensified the speculation. Her friends tried to reach out via text messages, asking what had happened, but her responses were cryptic and distressing. The repeated phrase, "Why couldn't it have been me?" sent chills down the spines of those reading it, making everyone feel both sympathy and fear. Teachers, too, were concerned but cautious, not wanting to pry too deeply into what appeared to be a deeply personal and tragic situation. Parents at home discussed the incident over dinner, expressing worry and speculation, contributing to the growing sense that something catastrophic had occurred in the girl's family. By midweek, the rumor had evolved to a full-blown narrative that both her father and sister had died in a car accident, prompting the school to organize prayers, offer counseling, and circulate a card for students to sign with messages of support and condolences. The tension in the hallways was palpable. Students whispered in corners, avoided eye contact with teachers who might inquire, and speculated endlessly about what had truly happened behind closed doors. Despite the chaos of assumptions and fear, a few students who knew her well understood that her history of exaggeration and constant attention-seeking might be influencing her extreme reaction, though they hesitated to voice this, not wanting to appear insensitive. The rumor became an unintentional lesson in how quickly misinformation spreads, how fear can distort perception, and how a single dramatic moment can ignite waves of emotional responses that spiral out of control. Each day without her presence added to the mystery, creating an atmosphere thick with tension, worry, and curiosity, while the girl herself became an almost mythical figure in the school, the center of attention even in her absence. Her supposed tragedy talked about endlessly by students who barely knew the facts. By the end of the week, the anticipation of her return built to a crescendo, as everyone, students, teachers, and parents alike waited for the shocking truth behind the blood-curdling scream and the tears that had captivated the entire school. The days after the assembly felt surreal. Every hallway conversation, every whispered comment in the cafeteria, was dominated by speculation about what had really happened to the girl's family. Some students were genuinely concerned, worried about the tragedy that might have struck her home, while others saw it as another dramatic spectacle to dissect and exaggerate. Social media amplified the rumors, with posts and messages evolving into intricate, almost cinematic versions of the incident. Some claimed that both her father and sister had perished in a car crash, while others suggested she had been hiding a secret trauma that no one could comprehend. Teachers tried to manage the growing hysteria, reminding students to respect privacy, but it was impossible to contain the swirling narratives. Every time her friends received cryptic messages from her repeating, "Why couldn't it have been me?" The tension in the school escalated further. Students speculated about the meaning behind the words, some interpreting them as guilt, others as an indication of mental anguish. Meanwhile, parents whispered at pickup lines their own fears, mingling with the exaggerated stories their children shared. The rumor had taken on a life of its own, evolving from a sudden, shocking moment in the gym to a school-wide legend that fueled anxiety, sympathy, and curiosity in equal measure. Behind the scenes, though, the girl herself was struggling, not with death or disaster, but with the fear of embarrassment, shame, and the overwhelming attention that had been thrust upon her. A combination of her mother's dramatic approach, her own history of attention-seeking behavior, and the misunderstanding of her peers had created a perfect storm. Each day that she remained absent allowed the rumor to grow stronger, spreading like wildfire, and the anticipation of her return became almost unbearable. By midweek, students were talking in hushed tones, exchanging theories, and preparing themselves mentally for the inevitable moment when the truth would finally be revealed. Yet despite the mounting anxiety and the wild speculation, there was an underlying tension. Everyone knew that the truth, whatever it was, would completely overturn their assumptions and reveal just how far perception and rumor could deviate from reality. As the week dragged on, the school became a pressure cooker of speculation and emotion. Students who had been indifferent before suddenly found themselves invested in every small detail of the girl's absence. The cryptic messages, the whispers in the hallways. Even teachers, who tried to remain neutral, noticed the shift in the atmosphere. Classrooms were quieter, students more distracted, and every interruption by a staff member sending a message down the line sparked new rumors. Her close friends, torn between genuine concern and confusion, tried repeatedly to reach her, sending texts that ranged from cautious inquiries to desperate pleas. Each reply she sent, simply stating, "Why couldn't it have been me?" left them more unsettled, their imaginations filling in gaps with worst-case scenarios. Lunch periods became a mix of hushed conversations and nervous glances toward the empty seat where she normally sat. The school's social media pages were flooded with threads speculating about her father and sister, some posting prayers and heartfelt messages, others making bold claims about car accidents, injuries, or worse. In the midst of all this chaos, the girl remained completely silent in person, hidden at home, grappling with her own fear of embarrassment and anticipation of judgment from peers. What had started as an ordinary school assembly had snowballed into a social phenomenon where everyone was caught between empathy, curiosity, and the human desire for dramatic storytelling. It became clear that the rumor itself had become more important than the actual events, creating an almost mythic version of reality that no one could confirm until she returned. Every hallway, every classroom, every whispered conversation added layers to the story, turning a momentary scream into a multi-day saga that gripped the entire student body. By midweek, anticipation had reached a fever pitch, with everyone waiting anxiously for the reveal that would either confirm or shatter the countless theories circulating the school. It was a strange and surreal experience watching how quickly fear, speculation, and human imagination could transform a private family matter into a collective drama that captivated an entire community, leaving everyone, students, teachers, and parents, on edge, desperate for the truth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of whispers, speculation, and anxious waiting, the girl returned to school, her presence immediately drawing the attention of everyone who had been following the rumor with bated breath. The moment she walked through the doors, the entire atmosphere of the school seemed to shift. Hallways that had been filled with hushed gossip now buzzed with anticipation, students craning their necks to catch a glimpse of her, and teachers exchanging knowing glances as they silently braced for the truth. The girl's face was pale, her eyes red from crying, and there was a tension in her posture that suggested she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Yet she was also oddly poised, as if she knew the story she was about to tell would utterly overturn every single rumor that had spread like wildfire over the past week. She walked slowly to the front office, where the principal, who had been briefed on her situation, waited patiently, and with a deep breath, she began explaining the actual events that had caused her blood-curdling scream during the assembly. As it turned out, the incident was far less catastrophic than everyone had imagined, but still deeply personal and embarrassing for her. Earlier that morning, her mother had arrived at school to deliver a simple yet dramatic message. The girl had been required to walk her younger sister to school because the little sister had broken her pinky finger the day before and had been sent to the hospital for treatment. In the confusion, miscommunication, and her own overreaction, the girl had screamed in shock, not realizing the impact her reaction would have on an entire gym full of students and staff. The truth, once revealed, created a mix of relief and embarrassment that rippled through the school. Students who had been praying, sharing condolences, and imagining catastrophic scenarios were suddenly confronted with the mundane reality of a broken finger and a parental overreaction. Her friends, who had anxiously messaged her all week, breathed sighs of relief, though some struggled to hide their amusement at how wildly the situation had been misinterpreted. The school itself had to navigate the fallout, managing the awkwardness that followed the revelation while simultaneously reassuring students that rumors, exaggerations, and assumptions could have unintended consequences. The girl became the center of attention once again, but this time it was for the stark contrast between reality and the rumor, highlighting the extreme power of human imagination and social speculation. Discussions in classrooms, cafeterias, and even on school social media threads pivoted from expressions of concern to debates about how quickly a single dramatic moment could spiral into a week-long saga of misinformation. Teachers used the incident as an example to encourage empathy, critical thinking, and caution when dealing with rumors, reminding students that jumping to conclusions without all the facts could lead to unnecessary fear, anxiety, and social tension. The girl herself faced a mix of relief and residual embarrassment. She had survived the storm of speculation, but had also learned firsthand how dramatically her reactions could influence her peers. Slowly, the intensity of the week began to dissipate, replaced by conversations that focused on reflection, humor, and lessons learned. Parents who had heard secondhand stories now had a chance to laugh nervously at the exaggerated rumors, realizing how wildly misinformation can spread. The incident became a defining moment in the school's collective memory, a cautionary tale about the speed at which imagination can turn mundane events into catastrophic narratives. Yet for the girl, the experience was both humbling and enlightening. She understood the power of attention, the consequences of overreaction, and the way social dynamics could magnify even the simplest of family mishaps into school-wide legends. That week, the rumor that had consumed the school for days finally unraveled, leaving behind a blend of relief, laughter, and newfound awareness, while the girl quietly vowed to navigate her dramatic tendencies more carefully in the future, knowing full well that her peers had been watching every reaction, every expression, and every emotional outburst with rapt attention, ready to interpret, embellish, and share it with the entire school community, even after the girl had revealed the truth, that her little sister had merely broken her pinky and that there had been no tragic accident. Waves of gossip and speculation continued to ripple through the school. Students struggled to reconcile the mundane reality with the catastrophic rumors they had constructed in their minds, and the intensity of disbelief transformed into a mix of relief, embarrassment, and lingering fascination. In classrooms, students whispered about the sheer scale of their overreactions, debating who had started the rumor, how far it had spread, and why everyone had so easily accepted it as fact without confirmation. Social media threads that had once shared prayers and condolences quickly became a source of humor and reflection as students posted memes, screenshots of exaggerated posts, and sarcastic commentary on how human imagination could turn a small injury into a school-wide tragedy. Teachers, too, had to navigate the aftermath carefully. While some felt frustrated by the disruption, others recognized it as an invaluable lesson in critical thinking, empathy, and the dangers of spreading unverified information. The girl herself became both the subject of empathy and gentle teasing. Her peers were relieved that no real disaster had occurred, yet they couldn't ignore the drama she had inadvertently caused. Meanwhile, the emotional impact on the girl lingered, though the rumor was false. The experience had exposed the vulnerability that comes with being the center of attention and the power others wield. When interpreting your actions, she realized how quickly fear and curiosity could escalate in a community, how assumptions can take on a life of their own, and how a single moment of shock could spiral into days of collective anxiety. Her friends, who had anxiously followed her messages and watched her absence, now shared stories of their own feelings during the week, laughing nervously at their overreactions while also acknowledging the genuine concern they had felt. Parents at home discussed the incident, some chuckling at the inflated rumors, others reflecting on how misinformation can travel faster than facts. And even the principal held a special assembly to address the school, emphasizing the importance of verifying information, showing empathy, and understanding the consequences of spreading unconfirmed stories. Slowly, the school returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of that week persisted as a cautionary tale, reminding everyone that human imagination, when left unchecked, could transform even the simplest mishaps into dramatic legends. And for the girl, the experience left a lasting impression. She understood the power of perception, the influence of social dynamics, and the need to manage both her reactions and the reactions of those around her, ensuring that while she might continue to be noticed, her actions would no longer unintentionally spark chaos that engulfed an entire school. The weeks following the reveal were filled with reflection, laughter, and lessons learned as students and teachers alike processed the incident, sharing stories, joking about the absurdity of their assumptions, and ultimately gaining a deeper understanding of how quickly rumors can grow, how imagination can distort reality, and how even the smallest events can have outsized effects in a tightly connected community like a school. After the girl returned and revealed the truth, the school didn't immediately return to normal. Instead, it entered a period of heightened awareness, reflection, and social recalibration. Hallways that had been tense with anticipation gradually filled with conversations analyzing the incident, dissecting each reaction, and debating the accuracy of the rumor that had swept the entire student body. Students who had been part of the initial spread of misinformation felt embarrassed and anxious, wondering if anyone had traced their exaggerations or if their peers would quietly judge them for believing and amplifying such a story without verification. Social media, which had been a catalyst for the rumor, became both a source of humor and guilt. Screenshots of the cryptic messages, threads speculating about death, and exaggerated posts now circulated alongside comments of relief and mockery, turning what had once seemed tragic into a complex social lesson. Teachers observed shifts in peer dynamics, noting that some students were now more hesitant to believe everything they heard, while others had developed a newfound appreciation for critical thinking and fact-checking. Counseling sessions were offered to those who had been most affected emotionally, including close friends of the girl who had experienced anxiety, guilt, and worry during her absence. The girl herself navigated a complex mix of relief, embarrassment, and self-awareness. She realized how her own dramatic tendencies, combined with miscommunication and the overreactions of others, had fueled a week-long saga that had consumed the school. Despite the embarrassment, she began to reflect on the lessons learned, the power of social influence, the impact of attention-seeking behavior, and the rapid speed at which misinformation could spread. Conversations in classrooms became more cautious, with students more thoughtful about what they shared and how they interpreted others' reactions. The administration took proactive steps, organizing workshops on empathy, responsible communication, and rumor management, emphasizing the real-world consequences of unchecked speculation. Over time, the initial shock and tension evolved into shared stories of humor, relief, and social bonding. Students recounted their own reactions during the week, laughing at their assumptions while acknowledging the genuine fear and concern they had experienced. Parents, too, engaged in conversations about the incident, reflecting on the importance of teaching children discernment, empathy, and the value of verifying information before reacting. For the girl, the aftermath became a period of growth. She learned to navigate attention in healthier ways, to moderate her reactions, and to understand the power her behavior could have on an entire community. The weeks following the reveal were a mix of normal school routines and quiet reflection as students and staff processed the extraordinary events, recognized the unpredictability of human response, and gained insight into how even small actions could cascade into dramatic consequences. Ultimately, the incident became a defining moment for the school, remembered not only as a wild rumor but also as a profound lesson in empathy, responsibility, social dynamics, and the delicate balance between perception and reality. The girl's story, once a source of anxiety and speculation, transformed into a narrative that highlighted resilience, the complexity of peer influence, and the unpredictable ways in which ordinary events can spiral into extraordinary school-wide phenomena. Each hallway conversation, classroom discussion, and social media post carried the echo of that week, reminding everyone of the thin line between rumor and reality, and of the profound social and emotional lessons embedded in what had started as a single dramatic scream in the school gym. Even after the initial shock of the truth was revealed, the social aftermath at school continued to unfold in ways that were both subtle and profound. The girl, who had once been the center of attention for her dramatic tendencies, now found herself navigating a complex landscape of curiosity, relief, and judgment from her peers. Students who had been overly invested in the rumor struggled to balance their relief that no real tragedy had occurred with their lingering fascination with the drama they had constructed in their imaginations. Some felt guilty for having spread the story without verification, while others reveled in the storytelling and attention it had generated. The girl's friends, who had anxiously followed her cryptic messages, now became key allies in helping her reestablish her social presence in a way that minimized further misunderstandings. Class discussions, lunchroom chatter, and even casual hallway interactions were now colored by the memory of the rumor. Students referenced the event both jokingly and seriously, reflecting on the consequences of assumptions and exaggerations. Teachers noticed that the incident had shifted peer dynamics, creating a heightened sense of awareness and caution in how students communicated with each other. Social media remained a persistent backdrop, with posts analyzing the incident, memes highlighting the absurdity of assumptions, and reflective commentary on the rapid spread of misinformation. The girl herself began to internalize the lessons, realizing how her behavior, combined with her peers' interpretations, had escalated a minor family incident into a week-long school-wide phenomenon. She started to understand the responsibilities that come with being visible and the influence one can have on the social environment. Meanwhile, administrators and counselors leveraged the incident as an educational tool, holding discussions and workshops on empathy, rumor management, and critical thinking. The narrative of the broken pinky had transformed from a private, personal event into a social catalyst, prompting conversations about human psychology, group behavior, and the rapidity with which perception can outpace reality. Over time, the girls' peers began to shift from judgment and curiosity toward empathy and reflection, acknowledging both the intensity of their reactions and the vulnerability of the girl, who had unintentionally sparked such widespread attention. The weeks following the reveal were a mix of normal school activities interspersed with quiet reminders of the event. Each time a small misunderstanding occurred, students reflected on how quickly assumptions could spiral out of control. Parents, too, discussed the incident at home, using it as a case study in teaching children about responsibility, discernment, and the social consequences of spreading unverified information. The girl, navigating her own mix of embarrassment, relief, and self-awareness, began to emerge with a stronger understanding of social dynamics, personal boundaries, and the profound influence of perception. By the end of the term, what had started as a dramatic scream and cryptic message had evolved into a multi-layered lesson in human behavior, resilience, empathy, and the unpredictable consequences of attention and rumor in a tightly knit school community. The incident remained a defining memory for students, teachers, and parents alike a reminder of how a single moment can ripple across an entire community, shaping social behavior, emotional responses, and the collective understanding of truth, perception, and human connection in ways that no one could have predicted. In the weeks and months that followed the revelation of the truth, the girl's life at school settled into a new, though still tense, rhythm as she navigated the lingering social consequences of the rumor and the week-long saga it had sparked. While the immediate fear and speculation had dissipated, the memory of her dramatic scream and the ensuing chaos remained fresh in the minds of her peers, subtly influencing social interactions, peer dynamics, and even the way teachers approached classroom management. The girl herself experienced a profound transformation in self-awareness, recognizing the weight her reactions carried and the ways in which attention, whether sought or unintended, could shape an entire community's perception. She became more thoughtful in her interactions, learning to balance her desire for attention with a growing understanding of responsibility, empathy, and social consequence. Her friends, who had once been caught in the tension of anxious texting and worry, now assumed a new role as confidants and supporters, helping her rebuild her social presence while guiding her through moments of embarrassment and social uncertainty. Students who had participated in the rumor spread also experienced their own lessons, grappling with the realization that assumptions, speculation, and exaggeration can carry real emotional consequences for those involved. In classrooms and hallways, subtle shifts in behavior emerged. Students became more cautious about passing along unverified information, more attentive to the emotional states of their peers, and more willing to question assumptions before acting on them. Social media, which had once amplified the rumor, gradually shifted from posts of exaggerated speculation to reflective discussions, memes highlighting the absurdity of overreaction, and educational threads about critical thinking, empathy, and responsible communication. Teachers noted that the incident had a lasting impact on classroom culture, encouraging more nuanced discussions about perception versus reality, the ethics of rumor spreading, and the social responsibilities of students in a closely connected environment. Administrators leveraged the event as a case study, incorporating it into assemblies, workshops, and guidance counseling sessions, emphasizing lessons in emotional intelligence, social awareness, and the ripple effects of seemingly minor actions. For the girl, the aftermath was also deeply personal. She learned to navigate attention-seeking tendencies more responsibly, to communicate clearly with peers, and to manage both her reactions and the reactions of others in a way that prevented further chaos. At home, discussions with her parents reinforced these lessons as they encouraged her to reflect on the experience, understand its impact, and cultivate emotional resilience. Over time, her confidence grew, not the brash confidence that had fueled earlier attention-seeking, but a mature, measured self-assurance grounded in awareness of consequence and empathy. Her peers gradually integrated the lessons from the incident into their own social interactions, developing a heightened sensitivity to the feelings of others, the potential consequences of rumor spreading, and the importance of verifying information before acting. The school community as a whole emerged with a newfound understanding of human behavior, group dynamics, and the interplay between perception, speculation, and reality. While the dramatic events of the week had faded from immediate memory, their impact endured in the subtle, ongoing patterns of behavior, reflection, and social responsibility that shaped the remaining months of the school year. For the girl, this period marked a turning point in her personal growth, social awareness, and emotional intelligence, laying the foundation for more responsible interactions, stronger friendships, and a deeper understanding of the unpredictable ways in which human perception can influence reality, both in the classroom and beyond. The incident, once a source of embarrassment and chaos, had transformed into a catalyst for learning, growth, and resilience, leaving an indelible mark on her development and on the collective consciousness of the school community, shaping behavior, expectations, and social awareness for months and potentially years to come. As the months progressed, The girl's journey of self-discovery and emotional growth continued to unfold in ways that were both subtle and profound. Her initial embarrassment over the incident gradually transformed into a deeper understanding of human behavior, social perception, and the power of communication. She became increasingly aware that every action, no matter how small, could ripple through her peer group, influencing thoughts, emotions, and social dynamics in ways she had never anticipated. This realization led her to become more thoughtful in her interactions, weighing the consequences of her words and actions before reacting impulsively. Her friends played a pivotal role during this period, providing guidance, reassurance, and a sounding board for her reflections. They helped her navigate tricky social situations, mediated misunderstandings, and encouraged her to channel her attention-seeking tendencies into positive, creative outlets such as school projects, performances, and collaborative activities. Meanwhile, the broader student body gradually internalized the lessons of the rumor, developing an implicit understanding of the dangers of unchecked speculation, the importance of empathy, and the necessity of verifying information before acting on it. Teachers observed a noticeable shift in classroom behavior. Students became more cautious about gossiping, more attentive to the emotional states of their peers, and more willing to step in to clarify misinformation before it escalated. The school administration capitalized on the opportunity to integrate these lessons into formal guidance programs, hosting workshops, assemblies, and group discussions that emphasize social responsibility, critical thinking, and the ethical dimensions of communication in a closely connected community. Social media, once a vehicle for rumor amplification, gradually transformed into a platform for reflection, humor, and shared understanding. Posts that had previously dramatized the incident were replaced with discussions highlighting the absurdity of assumptions, the consequences of miscommunication, and the lessons learned from the episode. The girl herself embraced these changes, recognizing that her behavior could serve as a case study in social influence, perception, and emotional intelligence. She began documenting her experiences in a journal, reflecting on the week-long saga, her reactions, the responses of her peers, and the broader impact on the school community. This exercise not only helped her process lingering emotions, but also reinforced her ability to critically analyze social situations, anticipate outcomes, and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Over time, her confidence evolved from one rooted in drama and attention-seeking to a more measured, resilient form of self-assurance grounded in self-awareness and empathy. Her relationships with peers deepened, strengthened by shared reflections, mutual support, and an understanding of the complexities of social dynamics. Even months later, the memory of the rumor served as a touchstone for lessons in human behavior, reminding both the girl and her classmates of the fragility of perception, the power of imagination, and the ethical responsibilities inherent in social interaction. The school culture, shaped subtly but persistently by the incident, became more reflective, compassionate, and aware of the consequences of words and actions. What had begun as a single dramatic scream in the gym had transformed into an ongoing narrative of learning, emotional growth, and social awareness, leaving an indelible mark on the girl, her peers, teachers, and the broader school community, ensuring that the lessons of empathy, responsibility, and critical thinking would resonate long after the immediate drama had passed. As the school year progressed, the girl's experience with the rumor became an ever-present undercurrent in her social life, shaping not only her own behavior, but also influencing the dynamics of her peers, teachers, and even the broader school culture. While the initial chaos had subsided, the memory of the dramatic scream in the gym, her cryptic messages, and the wild speculation about her family lingered like an invisible thread connecting students across classrooms, hallways, and social media. Every interaction she had was subtly informed by the incident. Friends and acquaintances treated her with a mix of empathy, caution, and curiosity, always aware of the power her reactions carried. Over time, the girl developed a heightened sense of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, learning to anticipate how her words, expressions, and actions could be interpreted by others, and adjusting her behavior to prevent misunderstandings or unnecessary drama. She began taking on leadership roles in group projects and social activities, channeling her desire for attention into positive, constructive outlets, and in doing so, earned genuine admiration from peers who had once been captivated primarily by her dramatic tendencies. Teachers noticed her growth as well, commending her maturity, responsibility, and ability to navigate complex social situations with grace, and using her experience as a teaching point for other students about empathy, accountability, and critical thinking. Meanwhile, the student body continued to process the incident collectively, often referring back to it when discussing social interactions, gossip, or the consequences of unverified information. The rumor that had started as a sensational story about tragedy and loss had evolved into a foundational lesson about human psychology, group behavior, and the unpredictable nature of social perception. For the girl, the long-term effects were both personal and profound. She developed a resilience that allowed her to handle attention, scrutiny, and misunderstanding with composure. She cultivated deeper friendships based on trust and mutual support, and she acquired a nuanced understanding of the delicate balance between social visibility and privacy. Her peers, having experienced the dramatic escalation of rumor firsthand, demonstrated greater caution and empathy in their own interactions, gradually fostering a school culture that valued verification over assumption, reflection over impulsivity, and understanding over judgment. The school administration continued to reinforce these lessons through workshops, discussions, and counseling programs, ensuring that students internalized the broader implications of the incident. Parents, too, reflected on the situation, recognizing the importance of teaching their children discernment, emotional intelligence, and the social responsibility inherent in communication. As the girl grew more confident in her ability to navigate complex social environments, she also embraced her capacity to influence the community positively, understanding that leadership and attention could be wielded constructively rather than destructively. The memory of the rumor, the gym incident, and the dramatic revelation of the pinky injury became less a source of embarrassment and more a touchstone for reflection, humor, and growth. It served as a constant reminder of how human perception can amplify even the smallest events into significant social phenomena, how emotions can drive collective behavior, and how responsibility, empathy, and awareness are essential for navigating interconnected social spaces. By the end of the school year, the girl's transformation was evident not only to herself but to everyone around her. She had evolved from a dramatic, attention-seeking student into a thoughtful, resilient, and socially intelligent individual, whose experiences had enriched not only her own understanding but also the emotional and social maturity of her entire school community. The climax of the rumor and its aftermath had provided a profound, lasting lesson in human behavior, perception, and empathy, leaving an indelible mark on the girl, her peers, and the school as a whole, a lesson that would resonate long after the immediate drama had faded from memory, shaping attitudes, interactions, and the collective social consciousness for years to come. Even after the immediate drama had settled, the girl continued to navigate the lingering social consequences of the rumor, realizing that while the event itself had ended, its ripple effects persisted in subtle but meaningful ways. In classrooms, hallways, and social gatherings, students' perceptions of her were colored by the memory of the week-long saga, creating a delicate balance between empathy, curiosity, and cautious respect. She became acutely aware of the influence her reactions could have, not just on her closest friends but on the broader student body, and this awareness guided her behavior in increasingly thoughtful ways. Friendships deepened as peers who had witnessed her vulnerability provided support, advice, and reassurance, forming bonds based on mutual understanding and shared reflection. At the same time, some students continued to reference the incident humorously or critically, reminding her that while she had learned to navigate attention more responsibly, the social memory of her dramatic moment remained a part of the school culture. Social media, which had once amplified the rumor, now served as a reflective space where students shared memes, stories, and commentary about perception versus reality, subtly reinforcing lessons about empathy, verification, and responsible communication. Teachers observed the girl's maturation with a mix of pride and relief, noting her growing emotional intelligence, her ability to mediate conflicts, and her thoughtful participation in class discussions and collaborative projects. The administration recognized the lasting educational value of the incident, incorporating it into workshops on rumor management, social responsibility, and emotional resilience, ensuring that future students could learn from the experience without needing to live it themselves. Over time, the girl herself transformed her previous attention-seeking tendencies into constructive engagement, taking on leadership roles in school activities, mentoring younger students, and using her influence to foster a culture of empathy, understanding, and critical thinking. Her confidence evolved from the dramatic, reactive behavior that had initially fueled the rumor into a more measured, self-aware assurance rooted in experience, reflection, and the knowledge that every action carries potential consequences for others. Peers, teachers, and even parents gradually internalized the broader lessons of the incident, leading to subtle but meaningful shifts in social dynamics. Students became more cautious with unverified information, more attentive to one another's emotional states, and more proactive in promoting understanding over assumption. The rumor that had once seemed catastrophic had ultimately catalyzed a period of emotional growth, social learning, and cultural change within the school. By the end of Part 7, the girl had emerged not only with a strengthened sense of self, but also with a newfound capacity to influence her community positively, understanding the interplay between perception, behavior, and social responsibility, and realizing that even a single dramatic moment could have far-reaching, transformative effects on both personal and collective development. The incident had become more than a rumor. It had become a lasting lesson in empathy, resilience, and the power of thoughtful reflection, leaving an enduring impact on her peers, the school culture, and her own understanding of human behavior, ensuring that the story of the scream in the gym and the exaggerated fears it inspired would be remembered as a turning point for growth, maturity, and social awareness for years to come. As the school year drew to a close, the girl reflected deeply on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with a single scream in the gym and had escalated into a school-wide saga fueled by rumor, imagination, and collective anxiety. The incident, which at first had left her feeling embarrassed, misunderstood, and overwhelmed, had ultimately transformed into a profound journey of self-awareness, social learning, and emotional maturity. She recognized that her initial reactions, shocked screaming, cryptic messages, and dramatic behavior had unintentionally amplified the fears and assumptions of everyone around her, and she felt a mixture of relief and responsibility as she contemplated the weeks that followed. Over time, she had learned to navigate attention with care, to communicate clearly with peers and adults, and to understand the consequences of her actions on both a personal and communal level. Her friendships, once fragile and centered on curiosity about her reactions, had evolved into deeper, more meaningful connections grounded in trust, empathy, and shared reflection. Students who had once been captivated by the drama had themselves learned lessons in verification, emotional awareness, and critical thinking, transforming the school culture into one that valued thoughtful communication over assumption, reflection over impulsivity, and understanding over judgment. Teachers continued to use the incident as a teaching point, highlighting the interplay between perception and reality, the rapid spread of misinformation, and the importance of empathy in all social interactions. Social media, which had once been a conduit for fear and speculation, now served as a platform for humor, shared lessons, and reflection, allowing students to revisit the events with perspective and insight. For the girl, the ultimate resolution came from an internal sense of growth and empowerment. She had survived public scrutiny, navigated complex social dynamics, and emerged with a stronger understanding of herself and the world around her. Her parents and family, who had watched the saga unfold from a distance, also gained insights into her resilience, emotional intelligence, and capacity for reflection, recognizing that what had seemed like a moment of drama had catalyzed significant personal development. By the end of the year, the story of the scream, the cryptic texts, and the wildly exaggerated rumors had become a legendary cautionary tale within the school narrative that students, teachers, and parents would recount for years as a vivid example of the power of perception, the consequences of miscommunication, and the capacity for growth that arises from even the most chaotic situations. Ultimately, the girl emerged stronger, wiser, and more empathetic, understanding that human behavior is complex, perception is powerful, and social dynamics are both delicate and influential. The incident, which had begun as a moment of panic and misunderstanding, had culminated in a transformative journey of resilience, self-awareness, and social insight, leaving an indelible mark on her life and the collective memory of the school community. She now carried forward the lessons learned with grace and confidence, embracing both the attention she had once feared and the responsibility it entailed, ensuring that she would navigate the future with a balance of awareness, empathy, and thoughtful communication, and knowing that a single moment, no matter how dramatic, could lead to growth, understanding, and lasting change for herself and those around her.